Is this a dagger that I see before me? The handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation, proceeding from a heat-oppressed brain? I see thee still, in form as palpable as this which now I draw. Oh, thou marshalledst me the way that I was going, and such an instrument I was to use. Oh, I see thee still, and on thy blade and dudgeon gouts of blood, which was not so before. 'Tis the bloody business that informs thus to mine eyes. Now, for the one-half world, nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtain's sleep, and witchcraft celebrates pale Hecate's offerings, and withered murder, alarum by his sentinel the wolf, whose howls his watch, thus with his stealthy pace, with Tarquin's ravishing strides towards his design, moves like a ghost. Oh, thou sure and firm set earth, hear not my steps which way they walk, for fear thy very stones prate of my whereabout, and take the present horror from the time. I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell.
All right, you can hear me?
You'll turn this car around.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can hear? Yeah?
I don't know. He can hear us. We can't hear him.
Well,
That's the way it should always be.
That's the
Don't tell
way
him I
it
said
should
that.
always be.
We weren't talking about that at all. Well, we're here. We're here again for another episode of Theater Beat. This is Chris Barlow.
Hello.
And I'm Vanessa Beattie. And we are going to host a sort of a spin-off show. We had the Directors Roundtable last time, and this time we're sort of having a Director's Spotlight. We invited back one of the directors.
Which one?
Gary Meitrott.
Oh, very
He
good.
touched on a very interesting subject. He encroached on sort of how to bring actors outside of their own box.
It made me think.
It made me think too, and we kind of wanted to delve more into that as well as a few other just vast and interesting topics, like how community theater fits with societal norms, societal culture, cultural fishbowls. He threw out all kinds of terms that I'm thinking he made up on the
He's going to talk
spot.
about all that?
Yeah, he's going to talk about all that. There's so much that's going to happen. You guys can't even wait to see it.
Sounds like a great show to me.
We can't wait to show it to you, and we hope you'll stay tuned and listen to us talk a little bit about the crazy world of theater and getting your vision to actually...
Please do.
We're here with Gary Meitrott. He is our guest today. He is the artistic director at Shakespeare on Main Street, Vermont. And they do something a little different than most of our guests on this show, which is typically our guests on the show have a theater. We come to them. The audiences roll into the theater, pull up their chairs, and watch the show right there. This troupe comes to you. He performs with his group in many different venues in many different towns, and that's something that is new to us. So tell us a little more about that, Gary.
Well, thank you, Nessa. Shakespeare on Main Street had been stationed in Pulteney for 10 years. And this past summer, when I started our rehearsal for our show, I realized that unless we branch out beyond the confines of Pulteney, that we're not going to grow both artistically as well as an audience. And so I put it before the board that we need to expand, and so now we're stationed somewhat now in Manchester, as well as we're going to be performing in Brandon, and we will start off with loyalty to Pulteney with our next show.
Okay, that's great. And how does this, how has this worked for you so far?
Well, I've had the ability to grow as a director, not having a lot of pressure, frankly. And in these past 10 years, I have voraciously learned about Shakespeare. And because of that, I see how in our culture we're frightened by him. We're turned off, frankly, because I feel we don't understand how to perform him. And I have been garnering my craft for 10 years as a director, and I felt very strongly that we need to expand and go to other towns to show what Shakespeare can be like. So, stay tuned.
How do you push that boundary, that limitation that culture, today's culture has set on you as far as performing Shakespeare?
Well, all right, well, that gets into the subject, Vanessa, of my whole philosophy of how I direct. And it starts with, actually, for the individual, of how they see themselves. As an individual in our culture, we live in what I call a fishbowl. And the fishbowl is, we've been swimming in it all our life, and so it's so natural, it's just like, well, of course, this is what it is. However, I feel for how we are out in the street, and how we come into the theater, and here's where I get very edgy. When we step onto the stage, I draw a line, and I say, when you step across this line, you have to give yourself permission to be other. Now that is, to me, one of the things that I find lacking, and in, frankly, a lot of our performances today. I feel that everyone is bringing on from the street their everyday culture of being concerned about what other people are thinking.
Yeah, I can see that. That's a pretty big adjustment when people in today's world are sort of concerned and consumed by their own bubble on their phones or whatever, and this sort of expands their vision.
That's right. Right, and the thing about being an actor is that you have to give yourself the ability to be something other than who you are. And I find one of the things that I feel that I am able to do with my actors is to give them a safe space, and yes, I sometimes have to really egg them on to step beyond what they feel comfortable with. Because in our culture, and this is one of the filters I feel, our society filter is, we live in a culture that says, you have all this freedom to be whatever you want to do and whatever you want to be. And yet, when they come up onto the stage, and when I start to work with them, and I say, okay, well, you're going to be doing this and that and the other thing, and I see how much they hold back. And it's just like, no, this is not the place, and no, I'm not going to let you do it.
No, you get rigid a little.
Very much, more than a little. And the thing is because they wanted, what they're bringing again is from how they are on the street, that sense of being relatively comfortable. And the thing is, ironically, if you're on the stage, and I mean this in a certain light, and I'll have to explain it further, is you shouldn't be comfortable. You should be pushing and risking more than what you feel comfortable being, because the character deserves it. It needs it.
I've worked with you in the past, and I know exactly what you're talking about, because even when I wasn't speaking or doing something, if I was on the stage, you had me just in it, you know, to be involved no matter what you're doing when you're on the stage, and to be ready before and after you leave the stage to just be in character.
That's right.
And let it go.
You can't, well, you just brought up another point, is that when you're on stage, there is that moment actually before you enter the stage, and you have to be in character well before hitting the stage, because I speak in terms of our psyche. Our psyche, as much as we live in a Western abstract thinking world where we think we know that we don't know everything, but therefore we think we do. I won't repeat
I'm going to
that.
make sense of that later when I
Okay.
watch this show because none of that stuck.
and the psyche, our psyches are such a large, cavernous place for us to be in that we are conscious of it, of just a little portion of it. And so when you, as an actor, are stepping into a character on stage, the character needs X amount of time to percolate to the top before you step on the stage. If you step on stage and now I'm the character, too late. It's going to take 3 or 4 seconds. Those 3 or 4 seconds, the energy of the show diminishes. And I am rapt about the moment you step on the stage to begin to prepare. And I tell my actors, don't leave, in terms of when you're off stage, don't leave the theater. Don't let your mind wander onto your everyday life. Stay with the show from the moment you come in, prepare with costumes and makeup until the curtain.
Do you have any trouble with that in community theater, being with the pools that you pull from?
Well, yes, well, this brings up a whole other subject for me in terms of, and I first and foremost point the finger at my theater, Shakespeare on Main Street of Vermont. And I saw it in our production that we did this past year. And I saw a certain unevenness with the acting. And I realized that as much as I've been doing this for 10 years, I have been remiss in not promoting that my actors continue to learn their craft. Now, I feel, as with me, when I was quite a bit younger, when I stepped onto the stage, I instantly knew this was home. This was a place where and this was when I was a teenager. And I could grow into finding out who I am by virtue of being everybody else. And now
That's a great thing about theater.
well, it is. It saved my life, and I've worked in high schools, and I've had parents come up to me and say, "You saved my child's life," and I said, "I know exactly what you're talking about." But I digressed.
You digress, yes. The community theater, pulling from the community.
Where was I going with that? I'm known as Mr. Tangents.
I know. I've worked with you in the past.
Okay.
I guess, how do you think of community theater?
Okay. It's coming back to me now. That when you step on the stage, that there is a certain sense of you being a character. But that in itself, as far as I'm concerned, does not make you an actor. That there needs to be, yes, you can be in many plays, but I dare say is that you're going to be more or less doing the same thing over and over, unless you study the craft. Now, I have my passion as Shakespeare, and I have a school called the School of Outrageous Shakespeare. And I call it outrageous because if you're really doing Shakespeare, it's outrageous. I was going to use an expletive that I can't use on here.
You can't use that.
Okay.
Don't do it.
I'll fill in the blank.
Steer clear.
And I felt for myself, from our community theater, that we need to really promote. So at every audition, I say to those who are auditioning, when was the last time you have studied, whether it's with me or with another reputable acting coach, that periodically, because I find, and this is where it starts to get perhaps a little uncomfortable for some, but I think most would agree with me, is that when you go to see community theater, you see, for the most part, over and over, the same people in the lead roles. And there are those who are not as adept, and they're in the secondary roles, or in the third level, or in the chorus. And the thing is that everyone should continue their learning the craft, and those who are only doing the secondary or the third area roles, if they study their craft, I feel they are capable of moving up to lead roles, and so that you have much more variety of different people and showing different aspects of themselves that they haven't seen before.
What are some examples of being able to study your craft? Where can people go to get outside of themselves?
Well, I can't remember the woman's name. I'm sorry. She teaches in Rutland. There's there. There's another, that's the only one that I know of right offhand.
So there are places in the area where
there
people
are,
can go
and as well as myself.
maybe
that
do
I
an
can
online search or something and find, you know, classes? Is it classes?
Yeah, absolutely. People misunderstand that when you're doing theater that you are, well, that you are, and I do to a certain extent. I help my actors and in furthering their craft.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're directing a show, most of the energy is going in one direction. In terms of really learning how to act, it takes a different direction and a different amount of atmosphere to go over and working on things that you just don't have the time to do that when you're directing a show.
Coming from knowing you, you make a clear divide with acting between amateur and professional. Is the difference in getting paid? What is your criteria for?
Well, the difference between amateur and professional to me is not necessarily by virtue of getting paid. I think it falls back to actually what we were just talking about,
Right.
the studying of the craft, whether you went and did it at a college, you were in high school and then you studied it, or if you studied in college, or you studied it with a professional, that to me is the difference. It's not how many shows you've been in or if you've gotten paid. I feel that periodically what I look for is to see the actor that I saw 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, just last year, have they changed? Or am I frankly seeing basically the same thing? And that I want to put to
It's
all
all
of your
about
people
pushing yourself.
is that if you get bitten by the bug, fantastic. If you want to continue it, then don't just do what I call supermarket, going from one show to the next. That yes, do some for a while, then stop, and then study with somebody who is reputable. I put that emphasis on that, a reputable person.
Right.
And then take what you learn, go back in again, and then periodically back and forth. Now, if every actor in all of the different groups, which we have, I counted, what do we have, like 5 different community theater groups in this area, 5. You know, proportionally speaking, the number of people and the number of theater groups. So if everyone in those theater groups took it upon themselves to periodically study, I dare say, and this is my vision, that I put it out to all of the community theaters, that I would like that community theater to me actually is a swear word, because I find that it's used by certain members at any different theater group that says, oh well, it's just community theater. I guess it's not community theater itself. It's the word "just" in front of it that really gets me riled up. Because therefore, well, what can you expect? I expect a lot. To me, theater is a special. In fact, to me, theater is ritual.
Yeah.
And when I step into rehearsal, there is something sacred about it. That everything else that's in my life is pushed aside, and every ounce of my being is in what can I give to this production, and that's what I want from my actors.
And I don't think you should expect anything less.
Well, all right.
You were talking about seeing the same actors in the same sort of roles and you know, first tier, second tier, things like that. How would you propose to revitalize those people who would want to be in theater, community theater in general? How would you propose to bring more people in?
Well, I'm not sure I have a direct answer to that, other than that how I direct my shows, I would like to think that you see that there is something, there's a vibrancy, there's an energy that tickles and that is a bit perhaps inspiring and maybe a bit unnerving. Other than that, when you see that, and then I don't have an answer to that question.
That's okay. I've got other questions.
Okay.
Another question that I had is, you talk about giving yourself permission once you cross the line, giving yourself permission to to be involved, be an actor, be that character, let go of yourself,
Yes.
push your own boundaries. How do you get your actors to do that? Is there a method that
Yes.
seems to work?
Yes, it's my method.
Your method.
My method is I'm a
There's a
hands-on.
method to your madness.
I'm a hands-on a director, and I'm literally that. I step up onto the stage. I'm there next to the actors, and I guess I'd say one of the things that perhaps the way I direct, I direct energetically.
How
Well,
do
I'll
you-
tell you what I mean by that.
Thank you.
I used to when I studied it, when I was in college, and I studied directing, and I studied acting, and I would come with it all pre-planned. I'd have the blocking in the script. I'd have the characters all developed in my head. I don't come. Well, I come with some general ideas of what I want, but I come and I see I have my actors, and I immediately pick up the energy of where they are, or what I feel they can bring, and then I start working this energy and bringing it together onto the stage. And sometimes I step onto the stage to get closer to their energy, and then frankly also to give them some of mine. And there's something I also do that I know is in some views is taboo. And I only offer that after I've given certain descriptions and certain describing certain things a certain way that I want the character to come forward. The actor doesn't get it more times than not. It isn't so much that they don't understand it, it's they can't give themselves permission to do it. So frankly, I'll show them. And the reason
That's
why
always one of my favorite parts of the
the
rehearsals.
reason why I do that is to say, if I'm willing to do it, why don't you try it? So that really is my secret method. And that, as you can tell, I'm extremely passionate about it. That when I see an actor take that little step further into something, an unknown territory of how they express themselves, I'm the greatest cheering leading team that they could ever want. Sometimes I scare them because I'm a screamer. I gotta warn you.
I have witnessed that as
Yeah.
well. Do you find that, or do you feel that you could teach that to anyone? Is anyone going to be receptive to stepping outside their box with the right sort of interaction?
Okay, I would like to say most people. I think, ironically, those that would be the most difficult are those who have, frankly, acted a long time and are set in their ways. But new people, I think, given a sense of humor, a sense of support, and one of the things I guess I want to speak about, this is going off on a tangent, so hold me getting back, is a sense of lack of embarrassment, or no, shame. I feel that shaming is one of the greatest negative energies that we foster upon each other. In fact, we do it humorously. Shame on you. When people say that to me, I say, I'm sorry, I don't shame. And so I as much as when I work with an actor and I'm asking them to do something stepping way outside, I make sure as best as I possibly can that yes, they're going to feel uncomfortable, yes, they may be embarrassed, but not shamed. That's vitally important to me.
I can understand. And it makes so much sense too, because really as an actor, you're kind of hiding in plain sight. You're
Well said.
You're up there and it's you, but you're outside of you. You're showing your own emotions through someone else's words and actions and blocking and vision, really. And in that respect, how do you create that vision? How do you get what's in your head to happen on the stage? Do you have, I mean, is there like a tactic that you use in particular to just kind of make it real, or do you just see it grow and go
I
from
just see
there?
it grow. I see it grow, and we'll try it. As you know, we'll go over a moment 10 times, and I'll get a subtlety, and I'll say, "Do it again. Go more in that direction," and that is really what I find. Being there with them, that I'm emotionally involved with them. I'm not one that stands aloof, excuse me, from the other actors. That I'm right there, and they pick up on that, and I guess that's it. That's how I do it.
Well, Gary, I want to thank you so much for being on my show. I know you've been dying to come on here and
Yes.
welcome us to your
Thank you.
group. And I'm glad to have you, and hopefully we'll have you back soon and you can delve more into the world of Shakespeare. That would just
That's right.
help.
We hardly even spoke
We
about
didn't
Shakespeare.
even talk about Shakespeare. We'll have to come and do that again.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Ill met by moonlight, proud Titania.
What? Jealous Oberon? Fairies, skip heads. I have forsworn his bed and company. Na 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 na.
Tarry, rash wanton! Am I not thy lord?
Then I must be thy lady. But I know when thou hast stolen away from fairyland, and in the shape of corn sat all day, playing on pipe to corn and versing love to amorous Philida. Why art thou here? Come from the farthest step of India, but that forsooth the bouncing Amazon, your buskined mistress. Yeah. And your warrior love. To Theseus must be wedded, and you come to give their bed joy and prosperity.
How canst thou thus for shame, Titania, glance at my credit with Hippolyta, knowing that I know thy love to Theseus? Didst not thou lead him through the glimmering night from Ragonia, whom he ravished, and make him with fair Idly break his faith with Ariadne and Antiopa?
These are the forgeries of jealousy. And never since the middle summer spring met we on hill, in dale, forest or mead, by paved fountain or by rushy brook, or in the beached margins of the sea to dance our reels to the whistling wind. But with thy walls thou hast disturbed our sport. Therefore, the winds piping to us in vain, as in revenge, have sucked up from the sea contagious fogs, which, falling in the land, have every Celtic river made so proud that they have overborne their continents. The fold stands empty in the drowned field, and crows are fatted with the murrain flock. The sky-meant forest is filled up with mud, and the quaint mazes in the wanton green, for lack of tread, are undistinguishable. The human mortals want their winter here. Through this distemperature we see the seasons alter. The spring, the summer, the childing autumn, angry winter change their wonted liveries, and the amazed world by their increase now knows not which is which. And this same progeny of evils comes from our debate, from our dissension. Cease! We are their parents and original.
That was
Wow.
a great show, Gary.
It was a great show.
He was fantastic again.
But what am I going to do? I don't have TV.
Well, if you don't have TV, let's see, do we have broadband here in Vermont?
Oh my gosh, I think we do.
The internet.
The internet.
So you can look up GNAT-TV on the internet, Google GNAT-TV.
Dash TV.
And you can find us on video on demand. And I don't have regular TV.
Who does?
I don't know. We're in Vermont. We're just so eclectic. But
no reason to.
I have at home with my family Roku and Apple TV. And I catch our show on PEG TV. That's the channel that you look for on Apple TV and Roku. PEG.TV. And
There's
we
so
will
many
come
ways.
up.
Yeah.
And will come up on your channel.
So don't worry. You can see us wherever, whenever you want.
We got you covered.
We got you covered. So thank you for watching our show. That was a great show. I'm excited.
You did it again.
We did it again. And we're glad that you joined us. Thank you for watching Theater Beat.
Good night, folks.